It was just a wonderful script, but I had no idea that it was going to have the ongoing impact that it did until I got a note from the company that produced that show.
The original, disturbing version of The Twilight Zone that was erased by the studio is one of the most mysterious stories in television history. Imagine a show already known for strange and chilling ideas, but then think of an even darker version that was never fully seen by the public. What really happened behind closed studio doors, and why would an entire version of an episode be removed or hidden? Could there be more missing pieces of this famous series still out there somewhere waiting to be discovered? Join us as we explore this mystery. How the Twilight Zone turned fear into television history. The Twilight Zone premiered on CBS on October 2, 1959. From the very beginning, it felt completely different from anything else on television. The series did not follow one main cast or continue a single storyline each week. Instead, it was built as an anthology series. Every episode introduced a new story, different characters, and another journey into strange and unsettling situations. Some stories explored science fiction, while others focused on fear, morality, or the unknown. No matter how different the episodes were, they were all connected by one unforgettable presence: Rod Serling. Serling wrote or co-wrote 92 of the show's 156 episodes. He also narrated nearly every story, beginning with episode 2. His voice was calm, steady, and controlled, yet it always carried a sense of warning. Even before the strange events unfolded, viewers could already feel that something disturbing was waiting ahead. His narration became one of the most recognizable parts of the series and helped create the tense atmosphere that made the show so memorable. The series arrived during a complicated period in American history. After World War II, the United States experienced growing wealth and major technological progress. On the surface, many people believed the future looked bright. At the same time, fear spread quietly across the country. People worried about nuclear war, communist infiltration, and growing unrest within society. These fears shaped everyday life during the Cold War era. Serling understood those fears deeply because he had experienced the horrors of war himself as a World War II veteran. Rather than creating simple entertainment that helped people escape reality, Serling used his stories to confront uncomfortable truths. His writing explored fear, guilt, injustice, suspicion, and human weakness. He understood that many people were not only afraid of monsters or aliens, they were also afraid of what human beings could become under pressure. Through his stories, he asked difficult questions about society, survival, morality, and power. He challenged viewers to think about the kind of world humanity was creating and who would suffer within it. Cold War tensions appeared throughout many episodes of The Twilight Zone. The series reflected fears connected to McCarthyism, the Red Scare, nuclear weapons, and the possibility of human destruction. One famous episode, Time Enough at Last, followed a man who loved books and finally found endless time to read after surviving a nuclear apocalypse. However, his glasses broke, leaving him unable to enjoy the one thing he valued most. Another powerful episode, The Shelter, showed how quickly neighbors and friends could turn against each other when they believed a nuclear attack was coming. These stories were not simply science fiction adventures. They reflected the fear and anxiety Serling saw spreading through society. One of Serling's greatest strengths was the way he used speculative fiction to protect his deeper messages. He filled his stories with aliens, robots, time travel, and parallel worlds, but beneath those imaginative ideas were serious social critiques. Science fiction became a shield that allowed him to discuss subjects many networks and sponsors would normally reject. If a story took place on another planet, television executives often ignored the fact that it was actually criticizing racism, intolerance, or abuse of power in America itself. This approach gave Serling a level of creative freedom that traditional television dramas rarely allowed. A story about a dangerous mutant child could secretly explore authoritarian control and fear. A story involving strange creatures or futuristic worlds could really be about discrimination and social injustice. By hiding difficult truths inside fantasy and science fiction, Serling managed to bring powerful ideas to television audiences during a time when many subjects were considered too controversial. Before The Twilight Zone, Serling had already experienced serious frustration with censorship. In 1956, he wrote a live television drama called Noon on Doomsday. The story was inspired by the murder of Emmett Till, a black teenager whose death shocked the nation. However, network executives heavily censored the script because they feared backlash from sponsors and Southern television affiliates. Important details were removed or changed until the original meaning almost disappeared completely. The victim was transformed from a black boy in Mississippi into a vague foreign character. Serling became furious over the loss of creative control and the refusal to confront racial violence honestly. The Twilight Zone became his answer to that frustration. Through the series, he found new ways to speak about subjects television often tried to avoid. Even then, complete freedom never truly existed. CBS remained uneasy about Serling's increasingly political themes. The show's ratings were respectable but never overwhelmingly strong, and sponsors occasionally withdrew support during production. Then came the episode that pushed the limits further than before. The episode was titled The Encounter and aired only once in May 1964. It starred Neville Brand as a bitter World War II veteran and George Takei as a Japanese-American man. Nearly the entire story unfolded inside a single room, creating an intense and deeply uncomfortable atmosphere. As the tension increased, the episode moved toward violence and emotional collapse, episode that disappeared for 55 years. For more than half a century, this episode remained hidden from the public. It was not completely lost, and it was never forgotten, but it was quietly buried. Television executives removed it from reruns, home video collections skipped over it, and even many loyal fans of The Twilight Zone knew very little about it. Then, in one of the most surprising decisions in modern television history, The Encounter finally returned. It was not remade or softened for modern audiences. The original uncut episode was repaired in full in 2016 and later returned again for wider release in 2025. The return of the episode raised an important question. How could a series known for moral tension, uncomfortable truths, and difficult social themes produce an episode considered too controversial even for its own standards? What made this quiet, 25-minute story so powerful that it disappeared from circulation for 55 years? The Encounter. First aired on May 1, 1964, during the fifth and final season of The Twilight Zone. It was one of only 4 bottle episodes created for the series. In television, a bottle episode is a story set almost entirely in one location with a very small cast, usually made to reduce production costs. Even with its simple setup, The Encounter became one of the most emotionally intense and psychologically complex episodes the show ever produced. The story begins inside an attic. A World War II veteran named Fenton, played by Neville Brand, is sorting through old belongings. During his search, he discovers a samurai sword that was clearly taken from a Japanese soldier during the war. Soon after, a young Japanese-American man named Arthur arrives looking for work. Arthur was played by George Takei in one of his earliest television roles. At first, the meeting between the two men seems calm and friendly. Fenton offers Arthur a beer, and they begin talking casually. However, The conversation slowly becomes darker and more uncomfortable. Fenton begins sharing memories from the war. He talks about killing Japanese soldiers and explains how he got the sword. Arthur tries to remain polite and peaceful, but there is clear tension in the room. He keeps staring at the sword and repeats certain words with unusual intensity. Then the story changes completely. Arthur reveals that his real name is Taro. He also claims that his father was a spy for Imperial Japan and helped plan the attack on Pearl Harbor. After this revelation, the atmosphere inside the attic becomes heavy and threatening. Fenton grows increasingly paranoid. He is already deeply haunted by his actions during the war, but now he begins believing Arthur may have come for revenge. Arthur also becomes more emotional and unstable. He suggests that the sword carries a spirit and that it desires violence. There are no monsters, aliens, or supernatural creatures in the episode. Instead, the story focuses entirely on two men trapped together in a small room, both carrying years of fear, anger, guilt, and emotional damage caused by war. The controversy surrounding the episode came from several directions. CBS executives and sponsors worried that audiences, especially Japanese-American viewers, would be offended by Arthur's story about his father being a traitor. This detail was not a small part of the script. It was central to the entire plot. The episode suggested that a Japanese-American man living in the United States had helped support one of the country's most devastating military attacks. This was especially sensitive in 1964 because the United States government had still not fully admitted the damage done to Japanese-American citizens during World War II. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, more than 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry were forced from their homes and placed in internment camps. Most of them were American citizens. These were ordinary families, workers, children, teachers, and business owners who were imprisoned simply because of their race. The government defended the camps as a matter of national security, even though there was no evidence of widespread espionage or disloyalty. Because of this painful history, many people believed the encounter was dangerous and offensive. Critics argued that showing a Japanese-American character connected to espionage reinforced harmful ideas and reopened old wounds. However, the episode was not simply blaming one side. It explored guilt, trauma, and the emotional scars left behind by war. Fenton was not shown as a heroic veteran. He appeared emotionally damaged, unstable, and consumed by shame. He admitted that he killed an unarmed soldier and took the sword as a war trophy. The memories of war had clearly destroyed part of him. Arthur was also written with deep complexity. His statements about his father remained uncertain. It was never completely clear whether his story was true, whether he believed it because of childhood experiences, or whether he used it to force Fenton to confront painful truths. Even the sword itself carried multiple meanings. Arthur believed it contained a spirit, but the sword could also represent violence and hatred passed from one generation to another. The episode refused to provide simple answers. There were no clear heroes or villains. During a time when television often preferred simple moral lessons, the encounter left viewers deeply uncomfortable. The reaction was immediate after the original broadcast. Viewer complaints quickly reached CBS. Sponsors worried about public backlash. Some people called the episode racist, while others described it as anti-American. Many viewers believed the emotional intensity was too strong for primetime television. At the time, the Twilight Zone was already struggling with declining ratings and increasing production costs. Instead of defending the episode, CBS quietly removed it from circulation. Why the encounter still feels powerful today. Why does an episode that aired in 1964 still feel so powerful today? Why does the encounter, a quiet drama with only two characters inside a small attic, feel more emotionally intense than many modern television shows? The answer is not only in what the episode shows, but in what it forces people to admit about themselves. Beneath its simple setting is a story about the lasting effects of war, the failures of history, and the way guilt can pass from one generation to another like a family inheritance. When The Encounter first aired, many viewers did not know that George Takei had personally experienced the kind of suffering his character described. As a child, he and his family were taken from their home and sent to the Rower Relocation Center in Arkansas. It was one of 10 internment camps created by the United States government after the attack on Pearl Harbor. His family had committed no crime, faced no charges, and received no trial. They were imprisoned only because they were Japanese American. Takei was just 5 years old when soldiers came to his home. Over the years, he has spoken openly about what that experience meant. He watched his parents lose their jobs and his family lose its home. He remembered being treated as an enemy simply because of his ethnicity. He also remembered armed guards pointing guns at him as a child while his father tried to protect him from the painful truth. That experience shaped not only his identity, but also his future beliefs. Takei later became a strong supporter of civil rights, gay rights, and the preservation of the history of Japanese American internment. That history makes his role in The Encounter even more difficult and powerful. In the episode, his character reveals something deeply disturbing. He claims that his father was a spy who helped plan Pearl Harbor, suggesting that the internment may not have been completely unjustified. Whether the audience believes him or not, the effect is immediate. The character becomes a symbol of inherited guilt, while Fenton, the white war veteran, represents another form of damage. He is a man haunted by the violence he carried out during the war and by the sword he brought home as a deadly souvenir. Both men are trapped by violence. Both are victims, and both are also capable of causing harm. This is what makes Rod Serling's writing so powerful. He refuses to create a simple villain. Arthur comes from a family that suffered at the hands of its own country, yet his bitterness slowly destroys him. Fenton suffers from the memories of war, but his racism and fear prevent him from finding peace. The audience cannot fully support either man without also facing their flaws. Serling often created stories filled with moral uncertainty. In other episodes, he explored subjects like dictatorship, nuclear war, and prejudice. With The Encounter, he pushed even further. He created a story where war trauma, racial fear, and national shame mix together without clear answers. That is why the episode was difficult to watch in 1964, and why it still feels important today. The modern world continues to reflect many of the same fears shown in the episode. During the COVID-19 pandemic, anti-Asian hate crimes increased across the United States. Asian Americans were blamed, insulted, and attacked simply because they were seen as foreign. Some people who had spent their entire lives in America were told to leave the country. Elderly people were attacked in public places, and fear was once again used to justify hatred. Because of this, The Encounter no longer feels like a story trapped in the past. The relationship between Arthur and Fenton still reflects how racial trauma continues to work in modern society. Fenton's fear and suspicion mirror the way some people still view immigrants and outsiders. Arthur's shame and anger reflect the emotional burden many marginalized people still carry today. The attic in the episode becomes more than just a room. It feels like a symbol of hidden national pain, a place filled with memories and truths that people avoid confronting. The United States government did not officially apologize for the internment of Japanese Americans until 1988, more than 40 years after it happened. President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, which admitted that the internment was driven by racial prejudice, wartime fear, and failed leadership. Survivors received symbolic compensation, but no apology could erase what they endured. That is why the encounter still matters today. It shows how violence and trauma can continue long after the original event has ended. The sword in the attic is more than a weapon. It represents inherited pain and emotional scars carried by both men. By the end of the episode, the attic feels like a prison where grief, guilt, and revenge endlessly circle each other. Serling understood something far ahead of his time. Trauma does not disappear neatly with time. It stays alive, changes shape, and continues affecting relationships and identities. Unless it is openly faced, it continues to poison everything around it. The return of the encounter is important because it reminds people of the power of storytelling that is unafraid to show uncomfortable truths. It challenges viewers to face difficult emotions and understand where fear, hatred, and pain truly begin. The Twilight Zone episodes that vanished from television. What does it say about a television show when entire episodes disappear? Not because they were badly made, but because people believed they were too difficult to show again. They were not removed because of obvious controversy, shocking language, or public scandal. Instead, these episodes explored ideas that many people at the time found uncomfortable to face. If the encounter became the most famous buried episode of The Twilight Zone, it was far from the only one. Over the years, several episodes disappeared from syndication, were left out of home video collections, or were simply forgotten for long periods of time. These episodes were not failures. In many cases, they were praised for their creativity and emotional depth. Yet they remained hidden because they touched subjects America was not fully prepared to confront. When The Twilight Zone entered syndication during the 1960s and 70s, networks wanted the series to feel safe and easy for broad television audiences. Episodes that created legal trouble, worried sponsors, or made station managers uncomfortable were often removed. 5 episodes in particular were excluded from the original syndication package. These were The Encounter, Miniature, A Short Drink from a Certain Fountain, Sounds and Silences, and An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Each episode disappeared for a different reason, but together they reveal how uncertain and inconsistent television standards could be during that era. The boundaries of acceptable storytelling were constantly changing, and decisions about what viewers could watch often depended on fear, legal pressure, or personal discomfort. Miniature, starring a young Robert Duvall, told the unsettling story of a lonely man who becomes deeply attached to a miniature dollhouse displayed in a museum. Over time, he begins to believe the tiny figures inside are alive. The episode first aired in 1963 and was later removed from syndication because of a copyright dispute. The estate of writer Charles Beaumont had allowed the episode to air once, but later argued that CBS had not secured proper long-term broadcast rights. Because of this disagreement, Miniature disappeared from rerun packages for decades, even though audiences had responded positively to it when it originally aired. The episode did not return until the early 2000s, when the legal issues were finally resolved and it was included in a DVD collection. Its long absence highlighted how fragile creative ownership could be during the early years of television. A thoughtful psychological story about loneliness and isolation remained unavailable for decades, not because viewers rejected it, but because of unresolved legal problems behind the scenes. Another missing episode was A Short Drink from a Certain Fountain, which aired in December of 1963. The story focused on a middle-aged man married to a much younger woman. Hoping to regain his youth, he agrees to take an experimental serum. The treatment works far beyond expectations, causing him to grow younger and younger until he eventually regresses into childhood. His wife is then left trapped in a situation she never wanted. The episode disappeared from syndication because of legal threats. Although the exact details remain uncertain, Some reports suggested that the storyline closely resembled an unproduced script written by another person. Concerns over possible plagiarism claims led CBS to remove the episode entirely rather than risk a lawsuit. Instead of defending the episode in court, the network chose to keep it out of circulation for years. Sounds and silences faced a different kind of controversy. The episode followed a man who loved loud noise and constant chaos. Eventually, he begins hearing every sound around him at unbearable volume, leading to a severe mental breakdown. While exaggerated in the classic style of the Twilight Zone, the story resembled real medical conditions such as hyperacusis and extreme sensitivity to sound. After the episode aired, a former Navy serviceman sued CBS. He claimed the story was based on his personal life and portrayed him in a defamatory manner without permission. To avoid further legal complications, the network removed the episode from reruns. Years later, it quietly returned through home media releases, though no official explanation or apology was ever offered. The final lost episode, an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, stood apart from the others in many ways. Unlike typical Twilight Zone episodes, it was not written by Rod Serling or produced by the show's regular creative team. Instead, it was a French short film directed by Robert Enrico and adapted from the short story by Ambrose Bierce. CBS acquired the rights to present the film as a special episode of The Twilight Zone in 1964. The decision was unusual and bold. The episode contained no new narration or additional footage. It simply placed a foreign short film into the middle of an American science fiction anthology series. The story followed a Confederate sympathizer preparing to be executed by hanging. Moments before death, he appears to escape and run for freedom, only for the ending to reveal that the entire escape existed only in his imagination during his final seconds of life. The episode earned major praise and even won the Academy Award for Best Short Film. Yet despite its success and emotional impact, it aired only once on American television because the licensing agreement allowed CBS a single broadcast. After that, the episode vanished from circulation for many years. Many fans of The Twilight Zone never even realized it existed. Although it later appeared in some home video collections, its unusual distribution history kept it from becoming as widely remembered as other episodes in the series. What connects all of these lost episodes is not only legal trouble or contractual disputes. Together, they raise larger questions about control and memory in television history. Who decides which stories remain available to future audiences? Who chooses which episodes are forgotten? These missing chapters of The Twilight Zone reveal how easily powerful stories can disappear even when they still have something important to say. Fought censorship and changed television forever. Rod Serling spent years fighting difficult battles behind the scenes of The Twilight Zone. He grew tired of seeing scripts rewritten, softened, and stripped of their political meaning just to satisfy sponsors and network reviews. At one point, he admitted that being a writer had turned into the art of censoring himself. That statement reflected the constant pressure he faced while trying to tell meaningful stories. Serling often wanted to address serious subjects like racism, fascism, and xenophobia. But direct criticism rarely survived network approval. To get around those restrictions, he hid powerful social messages inside ghost stories, science fiction plots, and space adventures. These creative disguises became one of the defining features of The Twilight Zone. Beneath the strange worlds and mysterious endings were sharp questions about society and human behavior. The series always existed in a fragile position. During the years when the show aired, Serling still had some influence over the content. Once episodes entered syndication, however, control shifted to a different system. Local television stations, advertisers, and syndication companies became the decision makers. They had little patience for controversial themes, unresolved moral questions, or anything that could create complaints or legal problems. Even rumors of controversy were often treated as dangerous. Today, the same debate still exists, even though the language has changed. Discussions are no longer focused mainly on syndication. Instead, people talk about streaming services, content warnings, platform policies, and brand safety. Yet the main question remains exactly the same. What makes a story too risky to show? And who has the authority to decide that? In recent years, arguments about media censorship and cancel culture have become more intense across political and cultural discussions. Some people believe removing offensive material protects vulnerable communities. Others believe hiding difficult or uncomfortable works prevents honest conversations from happening. Both views contain truth, which is why these debates remain so complicated. The Twilight Zone, especially its banned and suppressed episodes, sits directly in the middle of this conflict. Serling's true strength was never about giving viewers easy answers. His talent came from forcing audiences to feel uncomfortable enough to ask deeper questions. Censorship, even when done with good intentions, can interrupt that process. When The Encounter disappeared from television, audiences lost the chance to explore themes of generational trauma and moral uncertainty. When Sounds and Silences was buried, viewers missed a powerful examination of psychological weakness. When An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge was removed, audiences lost a creative and experimental story that played with time and perception in ways many modern shows still try to imitate today. The surprising truth is that many of these banned episodes are not especially shocking by modern standards. They are thoughtful, emotional, and often quiet stories. Yet they still ask difficult questions that networks sometimes hesitate to explore. What happens when the enemy looks familiar? What if the hero is deeply flawed? What if justice is not about victory, but about accepting responsibility? The Twilight Zone never truly disappeared. It simply changed with time. In 2019, Jordan Peele revived the series for CBS All Access, introducing a new generation to Serling's style of socially aware storytelling. Although reactions were mixed, the revival renewed interest in Serling's legacy. In 2025, writer Dan Waters is scheduled to release a new Twilight Zone comic through IDW Publishing, featuring original stories inspired by the show's unsettling moral themes. At the same time, Ben Stiller is developing a feature-length Twilight Zone film about a fighter pilot who travels 125 years into the future. This renewed interest is not driven only by nostalgia. Modern audiences are searching for stories filled with moral uncertainty and unsettling realism. Series like Black Mirror and Severance follow the same model Serling used decades earlier. They take ordinary situations, distort them slightly, and force viewers to confront uncomfortable truths. Because of that shift, The Encounter is no longer dismissed simply as controversial. Today, many viewers see it as an honest and necessary story. Rod Serling's voice continues to survive, not only through reruns, but through the artists and creators still carrying his ideas forward on new platforms while asking the same difficult questions that made The Twilight Zone unforgettable. What do you think about Twilight Zone? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Before you go, be sure to click on the video shown on your screen.